Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you doing?
Good, I'm good. Just give me a minute. I think I have some connection issue. Just a moment.
Sure.
Can you hear?
I think your voice is patchy.
Yeah, just give me a minute. Um, can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I had some little bit of connection issue here. Yeah.
No issues.
So I think yeah, we're almost on time. So Priyamada is a nutritionist and registered dietitian from Bangalore. She's practicing right now in Bangalore, and she's also recently authored a book, something that's really important for all new moms and parents there. So it's called Your Baby's First 75 Recipes and Diet Chart, right?
Thank you so
Yeah.
much
So it's got
for the
like it
introduction.
Yeah, so it's got like all the right recipes that you need to know before you start solids for your baby. So I think by the end of the session, you can show us your book, Priyamada. So,
Sure,
a lot of them can actually benefit from what you've actually penned down for all of us. So
sure,
we'll go right into the session now, and then by the towards the end, we can see your book as well.
definitely. Yeah.
Okay, so today's session is going to be about infant nutrition, meaning infant meaning children less than 1 year. So technically from 6 months to 1 year, what needs to be done? Because I think that's the most important time where we start weaning our children, and we need to know what actually is the right thing to do, right? So we'll start right away.
And it is going to be more on the important aspects of infant nutrition. So the session is going to cover about the certain myths and taboos, and it's going to
Right,
speak
right.
about cow's milk, and it's going to be some of the important topics which I feel that every parents can actually pick it up when they are in the weaning stage
I
for their
know.
infants.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah.
uh, yeah, so we can just start, Priya, with
Okay. So I
cow's
think
milk.
the number one thing that we need to talk about is giving cow's milk to your baby before 1 year of age, right? So as a pediatrician, I get a lot of queries about this. Like even recently, I think a couple of days back, I had a couple of parents come to me and say the first thing they've introduced the baby is cow's milk at 6 months. So I was really shocked because even though there's so much awareness about all of this right now, we still follow certain things that can need not be right for every single baby. So I think the idea behind not giving cow's milk to a child who's less than a year old has there's a lot of significance to it. So I think the first thing is we all think cow's milk is actually a wholesome nutritious food, but it actually isn't. So once you start giving cow's milk to your baby as the first food, they're not going to accept other milk because there's only so much that a 6 month old baby can have, right? Apart from breast milk. So if you keep giving cow's milk to a 6 month old, number one thing is they're not going to eat anything else that has other nutrition apart from what you get from milk. The baby needs to get other nutrition, so that is not going to be there. Number one. The second most important thing is the baby's gut is too immature to actually handle the protein in the cow's milk. So we say that cow's milk actually has 3.3 grams of protein in 100 ml of milk, whereas human milk has half of that. That is like about 1.2 to 1.3 grams of protein. So that's only how much a baby can process protein in milk. So when you give double the amount, it's going to affect their gut. So I think they find it really hard to digest, and that could lead to a lot of problems too. So that is the number one thing about starting cow's milk in children when you start weaning. And the second thing is cow's milk is very low in iron. So now one thing is it is low in iron. The second thing is even the amount of iron that is actually present in the cow's milk, how much of it they absorb is very, very low. So they can only absorb about 10% of the iron that is present in the milk. Or babies can only absorb about 10%. So I think it causes a lot of iron deficiency anemia because we see a lot of iron deficiency anemia because of that, because of cow's milk. So I think that is the second most important thing. And obviously, a third thing is allergy to the cow's milk protein. So we call it cow's milk protein allergy. So it could manifest in so many other ways like skin rashes, diarrhea, blood in stools. They can have failure to thrive. Like they won't be gaining enough weight because of that. So I think a good time to start cow's milk should be usually we used to say it's after their first birthday, but I think a lot of new studies now says you can start giving it after that after 10 months of life to come down on the allergies. So I'd always say after 10 months at least. So never to start cow's milk before that. Any other thing that I've missed out on cow's milk, Priyamada? Like anything else that people need to know?
Yeah, that is rightly said, Dr. Priya. So some of my clients come to me asking, can I introduce cow's milk, say at around like 6 or 7 months of age? So that's when I
Correct,
tell them that no, it is better to check with a pediatrician because they are the ones to actually know about the baby's history and the medical history. Especially if a child is a
correct.
preemie, then I would always suggest to go for cow's milk after 1 year of age or
Yeah,
probably
because
like
the gut is
around
going to
10
be
months.
very immature.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and also the sodium content in the cow's milk is slightly heavier than the mother's milk. So I think it is better to
mm-hmm.
continue with the mother feed exclusively, even though we say up to until like 6 months of age. So if they extend the mother feed up to until 1 year of age, then I think that is going to support the kidney thing, and then like the sodium and the potassium content will also be
Yeah, the
well
sodium
handled.
content is something that I missed.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah, so the
Yeah,
sodium is very important in the child's life. So that is where we always say that, cut down on your salt and sugar. So I
salt
think you would
intake.
be able
Yeah,
to.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I
I
think
think
you
we'll
will
touch upon that later. Yeah,
understand, where sodium plays a critical role in infant's life. Yeah.
yeah. So I think a lot of dehydration, cow's milk and the dehydration are so hand in hand because they have a lot of sodium and they won't be able to handle all of that. And
Yeah.
eventually they all come with dehydration. So I think end of the day, no cow's milk before the first birthday or at least before 10 months of age. And I think it can be individualized. It depends on a family history, on on the individual side. So always talk to your pediatrician before you want to start cow's milk and make sure you're doing the right thing for your baby. So
True.
talking about that, I
So
think
I would just like to add on what you're doing to it, Priya. So when the parents are introducing cow's milk, so could you tell me
mhm.
like whether the diluted milk is better or can it be a full cream milk? Because I've always seen during my journey, I've always seen pediatricians recommending full cream milk as opposed to toned
Yes,
milk or diluted
yes,
milk.
definitely. So
Yeah. So I've seen parents
one thing
giving.
about yeah.
Yeah. Please go ahead.
One thing about giving milk is obviously you're giving it for the nutrition content and the calories that you get out of the milk. So there's no question of giving skimmed milk or toned milk or ultra high pasteurized milk and all of that to a newborn. So I think, now that we're all become health conscious and all that, it makes sense. If you want to cut down on your fat, it makes sense. But there's a certain amount of fat that every baby needs, especially in the first 2 years of their life. Fat is very, very important for them to have for their brain development, for so many other things, not just brain, for so many other organ development. Fat is a very, very important content of their food. So you never compromise on that on a child's diet, especially in the first 2 years of life, because that what you give in the first 2 years of life is what they become. So I think that's very important. And second thing is diluted milk versus full cream milk. So diluted milk in the sense, we tend to pour water and then boil the milk and all this. So you're going to be diluting the calories, the nutrients. So say your child drinks 100 ml of milk and you give them 100 ml of whole milk. That's how much nutrition they'll be getting. But then once you start diluting that milk, the 100 ml is going to contain only about say 30% or 40% of milk. You're just diluting so much of nutrients to it. So it makes no sense to give diluted milk to babies because our sole aim is to be giving them nutrients and calories. So that doesn't make sense
Rightly
at all.
said.
So
Rightly
never
said.
ever dilute milk and give, but again, all that after 1 year of age. So that should be after once your child becomes a toddler and not as an infant.
So here's the
There's a
question.
question here. Yeah, can we mix cow's milk in 6 months
In
baby
six
food?
months.
I think because you've authored the book, you should be able to answer this.
True, true. So, I mean, just to give a quick food for thought for the question. Yes, you can mix the cow's milk provided the child is around 10 months of age. So that's the
Correct.
discussion which is being happening currently. And as long as the parents do not have any medical conditions, because there are certain other conditions which we always think while introducing cow's milk to babies as well. So in case if a
Okay.
parent is thyroid, having issues or other medical conditions
Lactose
thyroid, or there is
intolerance,
a low
especially.
lactose intolerance, and any other medical issues for that reason, then probably you can check with your pediatrician, and then you can just go ahead and introduce a cow's milk, but in small quantities initially, and then you can increase it. But as I said,
Yeah.
please don't dilute the milk, and it should always be a full cream milk for the children, because the child can accept the fats and do not dilute the nutrients for that matter.
Yeah.
So I hope
So
we
to
have answered the
answer
question.
Hardee's question, I think you shouldn't mix, essentially, you shouldn't be mixing cow's milk in a baby's food at 6 months. You can do it at 10
At
months,
6 months.
but at six
Yeah.
months, when we say you don't give a baby cow's milk until they turn 10 to 12 months, it essentially means you don't mix it in the food also. You can actually mix food with breast milk and give. That's a good option if you have
Yes.
to mix something for it to get that right consistency. You can actually mix
Yes.
baby food with the puree and all of that with breast milk, but definitely not with cow's milk.
Another cow's milk.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think, yeah, that's the thing about cow's milk. And I think
So
as
I
we
think
talk
this
about,
is something. Yeah, as we talk about this cow's milk, I think
yeah,
it moves on to like children becoming fussy over a period of time to accept the cow's milk.
picky
So how do
eaters
we
and all of
handle
that.
the picky eaters, right? So this is one of the major
Yeah,
constraints among the parents, especially the working mothers. How do we handle the picky eaters? So what
that's
do you
right.
think that I think parents can put up their questions if they are here and if they are live on the video. What kind of challenges that they are facing with their infants? Because this is one
Yeah,
of the most challenging part in their life, as soon as
I know. Yeah, so I
a
think
picky
this whole
introduced.
thing about picky eating and fussy eaters, it all starts when you start weaning them. So
Yeah.
what you do in the first 2 years of your child's life is what goes ahead. So I think if you give them the right start to food and eating habits, I think it goes a long way from there. So I think it's basically our responsibility to make sure they don't turn picky eaters. So what do you
So the
think? There
family.
are, yeah, so few things that you can actually tell parents, to not make their children picky eaters.
Yeah, so this is one of the toughest questions. So, as I've been dealing such
Yeah,
issues amongst the parents and the children, so something that I listen is half the time they just run with a bowl and the spoon behind every child and ensure that they complete the food in the bowl, but they
that's
don't
right.
understand that the child's digestive system is still maturing, and it's just a tiny appetite that can actually take only small amount of food or in bits and amounts. So it has to be first of all in a
That's right.
distributed manner. So, if you were to ask me, I would just give some of the tips to handle the fussy eaters. So, if they are able to
Yes.
sit straight, then you can probably use a high chair, but not at the age of 6 months. But yeah, somewhere around 8 months of age, and then if their tongue thrust is good, and then if they have good head
Tongue thrust
control,
is
then
strong, yeah.
probably they can start having the finger foods as
Yeah,
well.
so that's
So
the
there
right
are.
time to actually start solid feeds.
Yeah, solid feed. So there are a couple of process which is being followed. So one is the baby led weaning, and the other is the conservative practices.
Traditional. Mm.
Yeah, so the traditional practices. So when we say the traditional practices, it is nothing but the porridges, rice porridges or wheat porridges or purees and fruits and vegetable purees, etc. Unlike the baby led weaning. So for the baby led weaning, some children are really choosy about going only for the finger food, right? So if your
Yeah.
child, so first of all, you need to analyze what kind of child you have. So whether they are
So I
following
think it's
the
very
puree method,
individualistic, yeah.
it is customized. So you have to first analyze your child whether they fall into which of these categories, whether they are baby-led weaning or they accept only the finger food, right? So in case if you're fond of finger food, then try to plan meals accordingly. I don't say that you have to cook separate meal for them, but whatever that you cook, try to make it more like a finger food. Say for instance,
Yeah,
if you are
so
making big
modify, I think it's always
quantity,
better when they modify the food that they eat as per
modify
the,
it.
child's need. According to every month that your child is in, it's always better to modify what you eat instead of catering separately to your child. So that can get, very frustrating for parents to always
That
make
is
a different meal for your child.
Totally agree. So that is where, like, I'd say sit with your child and analyze first of all. The second tip would be to plan a quiet environment. So please don't go for any kind of electronic gadget. So be it a TV or a rhymes or a mobile. So you make sure that, you sit with the child and then don't put them on any kind of electronic gadget. So there is a constant supply of information regarding how the TV watching or the mobile watching can actually affect an individual's life. So that needs to be
That's
cut
true.
down, especially during the when you're planning a meal time with your child. So don't think that the child can actually go for 3 solid meals a day and then two
Yes.
snacks, because that is the age where the children will keep running around and then they will keep having their quantity of foods. And in fact, the child knows their appetite better than a mom knows, right? So
That's
we
very
have to
important
learn and
because, yeah, I think like even as a newborn, we tend to tell them that, you demand feed your child. So as a
yeah.
newborn, a child is able to dictate when and, what, I mean, sorry, when and how he or she needs to feed. So I think older children have to be given that independence to choose when and how much they need to eat. So I think that
Yeah.
opportunity really has to be provided.
True. And we have to respect the child's food preferences. So that is something which I strongly believe. So in case if they don't like the choice of fruits, it's okay. I think they can swap it for orange could be like, swap for kiwis, or kiwi could be swapped for sweet lime. So ultimately it is just vitamin C that is going to be like, beneficial for the child, and it is going to be like seasonal, and it's going to be more on child independent. So the second thing is,
Right.
after respecting the food the preferences, it also depends upon the mood. So every child do not have the same mood every day. So what we see today is not the same as tomorrow. So I think
Exactly,
it is most
exactly.
important to go with the food and mood, and I strongly believe in that, Priya. And parents are supposed to give child-sized cutlery. So be it like a small bowl, a small cup, and a small plate,
Yeah, I
or
think that
probably
makes a
if
big
we are,
role.
yeah. And also when a parent is sitting at the table, when the parents are, or it's a joint family or it's a nuclear family, it again it is individualized. So I think one meal should be
Mm.
along with the family, where they will learn to eat by themselves by the time they transition from that infant stage to the toddler phase. So when a child sees the parents eating at the table, I think they would also wish to join them and then start exploring the foods during that age itself before 1 year.
Yeah,
So I highly recommend parents to, rather than feeding them and going behind them, they can give them
sit
the
along
child
with your
size.
child and eat.
Yeah, sit along with your child and eat, or let the child know what you're eating and serve the same food that you eat, but not the amount. But you go for the
Right.
same kind of meals or the same varieties of what is being served in your plate, and then give it to your child. So apart from this, I think don't bribe and reward at any cost, because I've seen many parents, if you're going to complete the food, okay, I'm going to give you a chocolate or a biscuit. So that is something which is
Yeah.
quickly picked up as a habit, and strongly there has to be denial from the parents, and that whether you finish the food now or not, you can take it up later. Or rather than serving one meal for 1 hour, make it in a distributed manner, or give
I
them a
think you
hug,
shouldn't
or
like, give a big
smile.
hype over eating and not eating a particular food. They
Yeah,
don't eat it one day, let them be. They eat something,
yeah, yeah.
a baby completes a whole bowl of vegetables one day. You don't have to make a big hype about it. Oh my God, you finished that whole bowl of vegetables. I think that
Rightly
creates
said.
a, that creates a very long-lasting habit, I feel.
That is true. And that is where, like, we have to set good examples, and we should be the role models for our children in terms of like eating. So if you don't like any specific fruit or a vegetable, there is no harm in introducing that to our children. Because if you don't like bitter gourds, it doesn't mean that the child might not like, because some children have the taste buds of accepting the bitterness as well. So that is something which I personally feel that it is completely
Yeah.
individualized, and these are not passed on as a hereditary stuff. So probably the height and weight are well accepted, but when it comes to taste and acceptance of the food, it's not something, it is gene that we need to label on, but it is purely dependent upon the environment, the kind of cooking we do, the processes, and several stuffs which is involved here. So I think that, if there are several other
Absolutely.
things that you have handled in your day-to-day stuff, like, how to handle the picky eaters. So what would be your solutions to the parents?
I think it's the same thing. Number one thing will be to set realistic goals. So you can't expect your child to finish everything that you keep on the plate on all days. So one day they can just have one spoon of rice and just be done with it. And the other day they can finish a whole bowl of rice. So, it just depends on their appetite for the day. So you and me are not the same on every day. So one day I can just have half a chapati, and another day I can have a couple more. So when we can be like that, so are our children. So I think you have to set realistic goals and make sure you don't get too much into your head about how much they eat at that particular time. Always listen to your children's cues because they'll
Yeah.
always be able to communicate. Even a 6 month old, when you're trying to feed a 6 month old, he or she will be able to communicate and tell you how much they need to eat, how much they want at that particular meal. So I think again, as you said, distraction plays a big role in our day-to-day lives now. So once there is no distraction, you'll definitely be able to pick up those small cues that your child is saying as to how
Yeah.
much, when he or she is done eating that particular meal. So I think always listen to your child's cues and as you said, don't restrict and ban, like don't bribe and reward for something, and at the same time don't restrict and ban a particular food. Don't label, especially dessert or chocolate, saying no, you have this and then I'll give you a chocolate. Don't do that. If they want a chocolate, let them have a chocolate, but try and teach them that they should have it in moderation and all this obviously not holding true for weaning food, but more like for toddler nutrition. But obviously, you don't restrict and ban a particular kind of food. You always teach them to have it in moderation, and that way, I think you'll raise intuitive eaters more than trying to teach
That
them
is
and
true.
force
So
them to
that's
do something.
something which we, yeah, agreed, Priya. So I completely go with your thoughts because even though it becomes more of a toddler nutrition, so that is the habit when it begins at that age. So I
Yeah, it
strongly
begins at
believe that,
six months.
at around
Yeah,
10 and 11 months of age, when children starts exploring, so they are becoming extremely smart these days to understand what is
I
happening
know.
around them.
So true.
So it is very essential for parents to play a key role in stocking up the right kind of ingredients and the foods on the table or on the cabinet because they know what is there and what is not. So which is
I know.
something like,
So you have a big bowl of cookies on the table. Obviously, your child is going to
yeah.
ask for cookies. You keep munching cookies and your child is having sambar sadam. I'm not sure. I don't think they're going to go and sit and eat sambar sadam. They're going to ask for cookies. So, I think
Yes.
you should follow what you want to teach to your children and teach moderation, definitely. You
Yeah.
don't have to really restrict and ban different types of food, but definitely teach them moderation. I strongly believe by that. And talking about this, I think the most important reason why children become picky eaters is force feeding,
Yes.
right? Force feeding, I think, is the number one culprit about, making children picky eaters and, make them have an aversion towards food and feeding. So I think, especially now in an Indian scenario where grandparents and are more involved in taking care of the children, they all think they have to, like, you give them a bowl of food, they have to finish it. So they run behind them, like you said. So I think they think that you have to give them the right amount of nutrition. You give them one bowl of rice and they have the right nutrition for the meal. That's what I think most of them think. But I think it's very important for whoever the caregiver is, grandmother or mother or whoever it is, to listen to the child's cues. Make sure the child is definitely going to communicate, like I told you. Child will tell you how much he or she needs at that particular meal. So always try and look for cues from your child, and it's very important to respect the decision. That's the only way you don't, you let them have a healthy relationship with food. So I think it's very important to avoid force feeding and a few
Yeah.
things
So
that
I
you can actually, yeah,
Yeah, Priya.
you
So,
can tell me.
what do you think about force feeding and gaining weight? So, is there any sort of association between force feeding and weight gain? So, could you just throw some light on that?
Yes, I think most of our babies are overweight because of force feeding. So especially, like when we all tend to think that, formula fed babies turn overweight and breastfed babies are the right weight. I think more than giving them a high calorie formula meal, it's probably because we don't know how much to actually feed a baby. So you expect a baby to finish one big bottle of milk and you keep forcing them into it. Obviously, they're going to get more calories and, become overweight, and that goes a long way. So even starting right from the newborn period, I don't think if you're for any reason formula feeding your baby, I don't think force feeding is the way to go. Listen to your baby's kid. Even as a newborn, they'd be able to communicate. As simple as
That
that.
is true.
Yeah. So
So,
I think
demand, feeding on
yeah,
demand is
let
more
them
essential.
demand. Let them give them an opportunity to communicate and tell you how much they need. So some few things about force feeding and gaining weight and all of that is, like I already said, set realistic expectations. You expect too much out of your child, you're going to get disappointed, and obviously that's one whole big vicious cycle going on there. So set realistic
Agree.
expectations. And when you start solid food, let your baby explore the food, explore the texture, explore the taste. Instead of, initially it's going to be something entirely new for your baby at 6 months or whenever you're going to start weaning them. It's going to be completely different. So they need time to actually explore what's happening because that's
Yes.
the time they get to see their surroundings. They're going to another important thing as you start solid feed is your child starts showing interest in food. So once you'll actually able to pick that up, your child will start showing interest when you're sitting and eating in front of him or her. So that's also one of the cues to start solid feeding for them. So
Yeah. So one thing which
let
I
them
would like to add
explore.
is, yeah. So I think when they sway away from certain foods, it doesn't mean that the child do not like the food, because this is a very common mistake which I've seen among parents. So when they feed some
Yeah,
porridges, so immediately they tend to add sugar to it. They immediately tend to add salt to the food,
yes,
and then thinking that there
yes.
is no salt or sugar in food. So my
That's
child
probably why they're
probably like.
rejecting it.
Yes, so probably why they are rejecting it. So that's when like we as parents tend to make common mistakes by adding salt or sugar or jaggery to it, thinking that the jaggery is also quite healthy. So they quickly adapt to the sweet tooth, and they quickly adapt to the
Yeah,
taste of the sweet
all
rather
that is
than for the
acquired
other
taste, basically.
acquired
Mm.
taste, right? So what is your thought about the salt and the sugar when it comes to
Yeah,
adding it in the
so
infant food, and why is it
definitely
restricted?
no,
Probably.
yeah, definitely no salt and sugar until their first birthday. So why salt? Because salt, every food that we consume has a bit of sodium in it, right from milk, right from mother's milk. Even as you breastfeed, you're giving them a little bit of sodium, and there's only so much that infant's kidney can handle. So they're still maturing, and it's still an immature kidney. So the amount of sodium that is there in a particular food that you give they'll be able to handle that because that's what the kidneys are there for. But then once you start adding extra salt, whatever you're adding, whatever as we cook, whatever you're adding from the table is actually an extra amount of salt that is really not necessary until they turn 1 year because the kidneys won't be able to handle, and it can cause dehydration on a very cumulative effect. Probably once or twice it may not really do anything to the kidneys. But every day you keep feeding them food with extra salt, it's going to add up to their kidney load, and it can actually be quite dangerous for your baby. So definitely no added salt until they turn a year old. And about sugar, I think even as adults, all of us are moving away from refined sugar and white sugar and all of
Yeah.
that. So sugar is basically an acquired taste. So I would really advise people to move away from introducing sugar as long as you can. White sugar, definitely, it's always better to avoid. Sugar in any form, in the sense jaggery and palm sugar and coconut sugar, you can give. It's good to introduce, once in a while to your baby. But in the beginning, like you said, once they just turn away from a particular food, you think probably when you add sugar, to it, it gets better. They get acquired to that particular taste, and from then on, it's
Yeah.
always about sugary food. So I think it's always
Right. Right.
healthy to delay introduction of sugar. And another most important thing, just like cow's milk, is avoiding honey until they turn 1 year. So definitely no honey until the baby is 1 year because honey actually can prove to be dangerous because of some organisms called
Bacteria.
Clostridium botulinum in it.
Cluster.
So yeah, it could prove really dangerous to your baby. So definitely no honey until they turn 1 year, and sugar and sugar substitutes until 1 year because I think it's an acquired taste and it's always better to avoid it. So
Okay.
that's about
So, but
salt and
still,
sugar in food.
yeah. But as a nutritionist, I've always recommended jaggery as a preferred and a
Yeah,
better substitute for the sugar, because what
preferred.
happens is,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, because what happens is that though it is completely unrefined, or it is processed to some extent, but it is not extra processed like sugar. So they can
Hmm.
definitely add at least a pinch of jaggery to it. So the first thing
Yes.
probably might be the acquired taste, but what happens is their energy level also at one point of time goes down.
Yeah,
So when
jaggery
we
is
look
so rich in
back at
iron,
the,
so I think,
yeah,
yeah.
it's rich in iron, and also apart from that, I think the children also need that amount of energy. So it could be added
Hmm.
to certain foods, whatever is preferred. So when certain child sway away from kind of porridges, so it could be added to the the staple foods, the ragi porridge, or it could be
Correct.
multigrain porridge. So at around 8 months of age, but 6 months is something which is too early, and
Yeah, six
I
months is too
think
early for it.
it is too early, right? So at around
I
eight
mean,
or
they're
nine
still
months would
going to be
probably be the
exploring
right
everything that
time.
you're giving. So I think
Yeah.
let them explore the actual taste of the food that you're giving before you actually add something to it. So I think, yeah, like you said, jaggery is the best sugar substitute that you can do to give to
We
an
can do it.
infant.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, that's
So
great.
that's about yeah, salt and sugar. There's a
Yeah.
question from
So,
Shivagami. I'm still breastfeeding my 2.5-year-old child, and she's a very fussy eater and demands only breast milk. Is there any solution?
okay. So this is again where the parent has to, the child is still breastfeeding the child, which is a good sign. So until the child stops by himself, I don't think that you need to completely
There's a need to,
let him
yeah,
go off it. There is a need to it because it is going to just enhance the immune system. And the second thing is the child is a fussy eater. Yeah, because for the reason that the child has always been latched upon to the mother's feet, and probably that could be the sign that the child is not accepting the other foods, and it's
correct.
high time that the child is reluctant about it. Just make sure that you just leave it, and they will come back crying when they are really hungry, or try to introduce new foods only when the child is wakes up, or child is probably like done with the physical activity. So that is when they are really hungry. So as Dr. Priya said, we have to go by their hunger cues and then introduce a new kind of foods. If they are just addicted to one or two family foods, please go ahead giving only the familiar foods that they are into, because they still have a lot of time accepting the other new foods. In case if you want
Correct.
to explore the child to a new foods, then please do it before 1 year of age, rather than we blaming the child, because it shouldn't be a blame game ultimately. So by the time the child transition from the infant stage to the toddler stage, let them get exposed to all kind of foods. And that is something where I strongly believe that the art of parenting also comes in, because there might be so many myths and taboos around you saying that don't give this food, don't give that, this or
True,
that as
absolutely.
option, right? So as a mom, we need to be diligent enough to make sure the quick choices and provide them the options of asking whether A or B, rather than telling like, what do you need for today? Obviously, when we give the ask, then it is going to be the, the desserts and the
Yeah,
pastries, or
I
it could
think,
be the chocolates and biscuits. So there has to be a
yeah,
strong no from parents' end, and
I
also
think there should
emotionally
be
they have
a boundary, yeah, but you
boundary
handle the
and
boundary gently.
yeah, it has to be
Correct.
in a firm manner rather than being very stubborn to the child, because if we are stubborn, then the child is going to be even more stubborn. So we have to let them
Yeah,
go and then, pull back the weight. So that's something, which I strongly believe when it comes to handling the food and
yeah,
mood and your emotional well being. Yeah.
that's correct. So I think, yeah, so the most important reason why we force feed a child is because, you don't really know how much your child has eaten. Have they had enough? I think that's the biggest
Yes.
reason why somebody actually force feeds a child. So I think few as I already said, always listen to your baby's cues. They turn away, they start biting the spoon tightly, and they keep
Yeah.
their mouth tightly shut. All these are signs that they're done for the meal. That's it. You can't really forcefully open a child's mouth and feed them food. It's not going to happen. So I think you have to listen to those cues. And in the long run, I think a very content and happy baby after a feed will sleep well.
Yeah.
And over the long run, they'll have a good weight gain. And they'll be able to pee 6 to 8 times a day and do potty once or twice a day very comfortably. All these are signs that your baby is actually having a good nutritious meal and is having enough, most importantly.
Yeah.
So I think that's if you're able to judge by all of this that your child is eating enough, there's absolutely no reason to be, forcing your child to eat a particular amount of it that you think is what is right for that particular meal. So yeah, I think
So,
this
Priya,
whole picky
Dr.
eating,
Priya,
force
I think,
feeding, they're all together.
yeah, for you. So when the parents come up asking that, my child has not gained a healthy weight.
Yeah.
Okay, so my child is probably say
Hmm.
toddler, not a toddler, probably the infant who is around 11 or 12 months of age, is just like 7.5 or 8 kgs. So it
Okay.
doesn't mean that the child is not healthy. So as you said, like what is your take on this? And this is something which has to be an eye opener for several parents, because if the parent feels that
Yes.
if the child is less than 1 or 2 kgs, okay, how do I increase my child's weight, and shall I give extra serving
Yeah.
of ghee
So
or
this
sugar?
body
You know,
image thing starts right from, I think, the newborn period.
sense.
So we always
Yeah.
think chubby babies are the healthiest and the cutest. I agree they're very cute, but not really. I don't think they are the only healthy babies. Even a very tiny puny baby is following we follow something called the growth chart. So you plot a child's height and weight in the growth chart, and over the long run, if they're able to fall back in a pattern,
Yeah.
a healthy pattern. So I think that is more than enough, irrespective of how much they weigh at the particular age. The pattern is actually very the range is very wide. So if they're able to fall into that particular wide consistently, not just once or twice, consistently, they're growing in their own pace. I think it's perfectly normal if your child is
Absolutely.
puny or if your child is chubby. Not all chubby babies are healthy. So I think that's very, very important to know. If a child is not chubby, it doesn't mean they're not healthy. So as long as a
Agreed.
child
Agreed.
is,
So something
active,
play a key role as
playing
well,
around
right?
well, yeah, I think, and very alert and all of that, and doing all the routine, things what a baby is supposed to do, I think they'll be perfectly healthy. So always, I think, as you go for your vaccination schedules and all of that, definitely your child's parameters will be checked by the pediatrician, so they'll be able to guide you better as to, I mean, again, that's a very individual approach. So your pediatrician will be able to guide you better towards, if at all, there's some lack here and there, they'll be able to tell you what to do to, make the situation better.
Cope with. That's true. I completely agree. So I think there is a question here, Priya. So
Yeah.
is it okay to introduce solids at 5 months if the baby gives all the cues being ready for solids? So I think it is a better start if you see the cue. So as we have been mentioning, but as long as the you just have to start with one feed per day because the child is still in the 5th month. So until 6 months is something where we completely recommend only the breastfeed. But if
One
the
feed.
child is
Yeah.
showing all kinds of cues, just one feed and start it around mid morning. So that is something where I have mentioned in the book as well, that if a parent is supposed to introduce the first feed, and if it is going to be at around 5 months, then mid morning, somewhere around the mid
Mhm.
morning, say at around 11 or 12 o'clock.
Yeah.
And if the child's sleep cycle is well and he is physically active, then I think that is the right time to introduce solids. So start with vegetable puree
Yeah.
would be my suggestion rather than a fruit puree, because what happens is, again, it's an acquired taste that we have been discussing,
Acquired
and the
taste.
child can immediately start accepting the sweets and the fruits, I mean the sugar in
Much
the fruits,
better
that
than
is fructose,
vegetables.
much
Yeah.
better than vegetables. Then later it becomes a great regret for parents that, have I introduced the vegetable purees than the fruit purees, it would have been better. So it is ideal time to introduce solids to children, say at around 5 months of age, starting with vegetables and carbohydrates and dal ka pani and few more the protein based food. So we will speak about it at the end of the session, giving you
Yeah.
some quick information on what kind of foods can be introduced. Yeah, so regarding the quantity of consumption, Priya, so I think that we don't have to go with the exact quantity of consumption. So
I
if
think
you
every
speak,
baby
right,
is
so because
different. So
maybe different. So approximately, if they are able to judge by their physical activity and measure the physical activity, that itself is enough for the quantity of consumption to be predicted by the parent. And
definitely.
quarter cup to half a cup, say between 6 to 12, I mean 6 to 8 months of age, and from there it increases from 3/4 cup to 1 cup, because even it can go sometimes beyond depending upon the physical activity of the child. So what is
Yeah.
your take on it? So be it from
Yeah, I think
carbohydrates.
it's,
So
I
for
think
every food group,
every
yeah,
food group, you include almost every food group in a meal. Probably when you start out at 6 months, you might not be able to do it. But I think, as you said, you start off with a vegetable puree or a mashed vegetable. And another very important thing is always steam your vegetables. Don't boil your vegetables. So
yeah,
steamed vegetable puree and mashed rice and dal, all of that can be started off at 6 months. The quantity is again dependent on what your child eats. Listen to your child's cues. I'll keep repeating that forever and ever. So listen to your child's cue. But I think, like you said, this quarter cup and half cup measurement, as and when they start liking certain foods, and as and when they've
yeah.
started exploring and they're used to the texture of food and all of that, I think it should be okay. But initially,
Mm,
at 6 months, it's just going to be a lot of mess, and they need to explore the food. They need to know what they're
explode.
doing.
Yeah,
I
and
think that's
parents
very
also should
important.
embrace such kind of a mess, which is something, I keep encouraging parents to do. It's okay when they make the place messy because they are in this phase of exploration. So
Okay.
parents should learn to embrace the mess, how no matter what and at what meal times, it doesn't matter. So I think there is a
There's
question
one
on
question from Sheetal. Yeah.
previously
Introducing water, when and
water.
how
Yeah.
much per day?
So I think water can be introduced at around 6 months of age again. So I've always
Yeah.
been recommending water consumption when they start the solids right away. They can start introducing the water in parallel, and especially just not the plain water. They can go ahead with ajwain water, or because that is considered to be the most safe water, either ajwain
Mm-hmm.
seeds or it is called as omum. They can add it to the
Mm-hmm.
water and then close it for some time, which is going to aid them in digestion, or it can be the
Okay.
ajwain leaf, or it can be the omum seed directly, and then close it for around 2 to 3 minutes to the boiled water, and then have 1 or 2 teaspoons of it given post the feed, and then burp the child. It is going to aid in complete digestion, so the parents don't have to worry about the digestion at all because it is so much powerful. So these are some of the spices which is also being dealt in the book, because some of the spices
Yeah.
should be introduced before 1 year of age, right? So it's just not the ajwain.
I
So what
know.
is your take on other spices and condiments? So it should be like
Yeah, about
asafoetida.
this water thing, I'll also like to say about this water, another point
Yeah,
about giving water to a child. Start giving water as soon as you give a meal. So at 6 months, you give one meal a day. Make sure you give them a little amount of water post the meal. It could range anyway. You can just leave half a glass of water in front of the child, and you can help the child, aid the child in picking up the glass and drinking. And open cup drinking is something we all recommend now, more than giving them a sippy cup and letting them, sip it out. It's always better to
yeah,
start open cup drinking, even right from 6 months. It can be practiced. There are a lot of open cups, these silicone cups and all of that. They're available online that you can just buy something off Amazon. So I think it's a very nice way to introduce water to your child, because I think that's the most mess-free thing. Introducing water in an open cup. You can actually, even if you can't get those silicone cups from off Amazon, you can use these medicine cups, all those small medicine caps that we get. So you can start introducing water in that also, because they get the habit of able to pick up the glass and drink it by themselves. So that's something that I like to say whenever a patient asks me about what, I always tell them to try open cup drinking, just to give it a shot and see how the baby how the baby does about it. So regarding
cool. So
spices,
this
yeah, regarding spices that you were asking, I think, yeah, ajwain is one of the safest things to be started, like you said. And one of the things that we don't recommend is starting chili for the child less than 1 year, or at least less than 10 months. So you always wait to start chili for the child, because it can irritate the gut and cause a few gut issues, because you're already going to be introducing new food to your baby, and you really don't know what is causing which problem. So it's always advisable to wait on chili. So chili, salt, and sugar is something you always wait until the end of 1 year. So prior to that, I think you can start turmeric. Turmeric is very good to start. Cumin and a lot of ginger
cumin.
and
Yeah.
garlic
So
gives a lot of flavor. So
yes. So I think a little bit
yeah,
of
so ginger, garlic, cumin,
cinnamon can also be like given to the child
cinnamon,
in the
yeah,
soups, and
pepper
yeah. So
also. I
there
think you
are
can start pepper.
pepper.
Probably not at
Yes,
six
pepper.
months.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so pepper can also be started at the 6 months of age. So
Oh,
there
and
are
hing.
around 5 to 6
Asafoetida is
spices.
something very good.
Asafoetida.
Asafoetida as
Agreed.
well, right?
Yeah, so far, around like 6 to 7 spices and condiments can be introduced well before 1 year of age, and the
Mm-hmm.
very obvious ones are like the mustards and then the jeeras and other things can be added rather than just giving them the bland food for the khichdis or
Okay.
pongal. So that is something as recipes which could be like as a tadka that can be topped up and then given to the child rather
Correct.
than just a mashed food. So
Mm-hmm.
that is something, and when it comes to certain macronutrients and micronutrients, we always focus only upon carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. But there are 2 or 3 essential nutrients which has always been like missed among parents. So that is something which I would like to like focus upon and then bring that up here during our discussion. So as a pediatrician, what is
Yeah.
your take on calcium and vitamin D? Because pediatricians always
Yeah.
recommend vitamin D drops until the child is 1 year. Now it has been like extended to two
Correct.
years. what is the right
2
age
years.
until
Yeah.
age
So
that can be put up?
yeah, so
Yeah.
the deal about vitamin D is one of the very few things that is lacking in breast milk is vitamin D. The level of vitamin D in human breast milk is very negligible, so it's very important for us to supplement the baby. So WHO recommends newborns up to 1 year will be 400 international units. So even if your baby is being formula fed, if not breastfed, even if your baby is being formula fed, the amount that is fortified with vitamin D, the amount of vitamin D that you're going to get from the amount of milk your baby is going to take is going to be very less. So it's always very important to supplement vitamin D because again, it plays a very important role in growth of various organs and all of that. So we generally recommend vitamin D so either when they have their newborn discharge or soon after when they come for our first vaccination. We start them on vitamin D supplement, and initially it used to be up to a year, and now we continue it even up to 2 years. Especially now when all of us are sitting at home, you're not able to take your baby outside. It's very important to supplement them with vitamin D, and it also plays a main role in immunity. So vitamin, there are a lot of
Yes.
studies that show that vitamin D has a role in immunity, and I
Mhm.
think there were a few things about vitamin D and COVID as well. But also, actually, recently today I read an article about how people are overdosing vitamin D because of this new funda about vitamin D and COVID. So
Yes.
make sure it is always a prescribed dose of vitamin D and not just something you take off the counter because overdosing of vitamin D can lead to problems. So always get a prescribed dose of vitamin D. Whatever medicine that you're taking, giving your child, always make sure it is a prescribed dose from a pediatrician and not just something you get off the counter. That's very important.
Yeah,
So
so I think even the
that's
calcium and vitamin D play a critical role, and then you need to get
yes,
the child exposed to the sunlight, because only when the absorption of calcium or vitamin D will happen effectively
yeah,
in
it's very
children is
important.
in morning sunlight, right? So,
Yeah,
how do you think that it plays a critical role in exposing the child to the sunlight? Because that is where we feel that there is a need for it, because the child these days are
yeah.
now at home
We usually
themselves.
recommend, yeah, even as newborns, we recommend them to be showing like as newborns, jaundice is very common. So there actually a lot of
Yeah.
families who think that when you show the baby to sunlight, the jaundice reduces. I am not very sure how much it helps in jaundice. We don't recommend that, but showing a baby under sunlight early in the morning actually can help them for vitamin D. So for what it's worth it, we just say, yeah, you can show your baby under the sun, not in scorching sun, obviously, but yes, in the morning time, you can show your baby under the sun. So we do recommend it even as a newborn. So it's very important. And also another thing that I wanted to ask you, Priyamada, about calcium. So we don't introduce cow's milk to babies. We tend to say that cow's milk has a bit of calcium. It's important for bone growth and all of that. But we also say
Yeah.
don't give it before 12 months. So what are the other foods that are rich in calcium that you'd recommend for a weaning baby, right from 6 months?
Yeah.
What do you think can be added for
So,
calcium?
So apart from milk, I think parents get obsessed with cow's milk. So if I have to introduce cow's milk, so it has to be only at 1 year age. So
Yeah,
the parents are really like worried about what if my child doesn't accept the cow's milk after 1 year. So they always have plenty of options. So I think the sources of calcium can also come from milk products, probably like the dairy products like paneer, or it could be like cheese, because cheese is
yeah.
one of the best
Cheese,
finger foods
ghee.
which can be introduced at around 8 months of age, and it has enough quality and calcium in them. So both paneer as
Yes.
well as the cheese as finger foods, right? And apart from that, there are green leafy vegetables. So as we know, spinach and methi are excellent sources of calcium. So I think if you give a child spinach khichdi, rather than just giving them a plain khichdi, go for spinach khichdi,
Okay.
go for spinach paddus. So paddus are nothing but the kuri paniyaram style, rather than just giving the dosa batter, making it into paddus. If they add spinach puree to the dosa batter and then make a small kuri paniyarams, then that is going to help them meet the calcium requirements. So as I said, and apart from
Correct.
that, the child is also given a vitamin D drop. So vitamin D again is going to help in the effective absorption
Aids
of
in
calcium
calcium
along with,
absorption.
yeah, sunlight,
Correct.
right? So beyond this, I think calcium for a child to worry about only happens when the child is not developing the teeth, when the child reaches that 1.5 or 2 years of age. Until then,
Correct.
I think parents can wait patiently to see how the how the child is, and if they are able to grow in a healthy way, or just check with the pediatrician, check the calcium levels, and then go ahead and go for the calcium drops. So apart from that, parents don't have to worry
Yeah, I
about it.
think
For
calcium
non-vegetarians, they
drops,
don't have to.
calcium supplementation. Yeah, calcium supplementation, I think we usually do it only for preterm babies because, that's when that critical stage when they will be able to get calcium in the third trimester and all will be not there in the preterm. So that's
Yeah.
probably when during the newborn time of a preemie, we supplement them with calcium. And I
So
think
ragi
once
seri
they
is one
start,
of the beautiful sources. So sorry
yeah,
to cut you off, Priya. So I
so
think
that's
people
okay.
should know about ragi. So not many
Yeah, so
people
I think that's
in
the,
North
after
India
six
or
months,
South
as
India.
we introduce a balanced diet, mm, it's
Yes.
good.
So the first food for a child should be ragi because ragi has the richest source of calcium, and it's a boon for many parents to actually know how to make ragi. If you don't know, please go ahead
Okay.
and search for the ragi recipes, especially the sprouted ragi, because that is going to enhance the iron absorption, that is going to enhance the protein absorption and the calcium. Because ragi
Okay.
contains just not only one or two mineral, but it has enough and abundant mineral in them and also the vitamins in them for a child to be able to make it as a complete diet. So if you don't know how to make
That's so
ragi,
true.
please go ahead and then see how to make the ragi. And also I have given that in my book about how to introduce ragi to your child and what can be added to the ragi in a sprouted manner, non-sprouted manner. Rather than the raw ones, go for the sprouted ones. That is something which I strongly
Yeah, I
recommend. So
think
you can just,
I think
yeah,
we have like only about 5 minutes. So I think you can show us your book and
yeah,
also tell us about where to find your book. And I think
yeah,
75 weaning recipes is something in abundance for all new
yeah,
moms. So it'll be really helpful if you can tell us where to find the book. I
yeah,
think we had a couple of questions as well, how to get your book and all of that. So if you
yeah.
can tell us about a couple of minutes on that, then we can close the session
Sure.
soon after.
So this is the book which gives all the information about weaning your baby and is the baby ready to start solids. So
Okay.
I think it should be visible. Then 6 months. So what are the do's and don'ts and tips of feeding a healthy baby? Stage one foods, the recipes, and the diet chart for 6 to 12 months old, feeding tips, and what happens to the baby poop. So when the child is being introduced to the
Okay.
solid and how the color
That's
changes.
nice.
So the same thing is being introduced at 7th month, at around 8th month, ninth
So
month. So I
it's
have
like
taken
month-wise.
parents for every stages, month wise.
Okay.
And what are the finger foods? So how can the children try the finger foods? And what are the first precautions that they need to take while introducing the finger foods? And how to determine the right quantity of consumption. So as Dr. Priya also mentioned about the consumption, you just have to go with the cue of your children. So that is something which is mentioned here, and special instructions before giving the cow's milk. So it is always
Okay.
recommended after 1 year of age, or around 10 to 12 months. Then what are the foods that the parents can carry while they are on travel? So that is the grab
Okay,
and go
that's nice.
foods while the, yeah, on travel. And it ends with the spices and condiments. So that is something which we have been
Great.
speaking about, the spices and condiments.
I think
So
this
just to give you a glimpse,
what foods to
recipes.
have during travel is I think something new to a weaning book. I think it's very essential as well.
Yeah,
Probably not now, but definitely a lot of them struggle with travel food for infants.
yeah.
So I think
So
that's
this
great.
is
Can you
the
show the
diet chart.
front page as well? Yeah. Okay.
So this
So
is
how
the, so
do
it is
where do
available.
we yeah, where do we get it
Yeah.
from?
So this is available on all the global platforms: Amazon
Okay.
India, Amazon US, Amazon UK, and it is available on Flipkart and also on iBook, Kobo, and other Kindle reads.
Okay, great.
So I think you have plenty of
Oh, it's
options
there on
for
Kindle Reads
this.
as well. That's nice.
Yeah, Kindle reads as well. And here you can see the diet charts, which is given for every ages and stages of weaning, with the recipes, which is being trial out with the nutrition value. So you can see the nutrition
Great.
value of the book as well. And
I think this will be of use
here,
to pediatricians as well. We can answer a lot of questions from parents with this book, I think.
thank you so much, Priya. And here it is, you can see the 75 recipes. And here, as I said, it is going to be the
Great.
how to determine the quantity of consumption to everything. So whatever that is, we
I
spoke
think
about. So finger
as we
foods.
close, yeah, as we close and end the session and save it in the page, I think we leave a link for your, the Amazon link or something for your book, so people can actually have a
Yeah,
look at
sure.
where to get it from.
So
Okay,
it is available on
I think
Amazon India.
Great. So I think I'll leave the link below the video
So
as we close the session, and
yeah,
people can just swipe up and probably go to the link and see the book for themselves.
yeah. So I'm
So I think
available
we're
as
almost
nutritionist
done.
Priyambada.
Okay,
You can find the book on my page as well, and you can just go ahead and type just the 75 winning foods, and it is available.
great.
And it is written for Indian mothers, especially. Yeah,
Yeah, I know all our condiments and spices. I don't think anybody else can deal with it apart from Indian mothers. So I
that
think
is
we're
so
towards the end of
true.
our session. We
So
have a couple of
thank you
minutes
so much,
only. So
Priya. Yeah. So there are
yeah,
other
nice
questions.
having you on my live. I
Yeah.
think we
Thank you so
can,
much.
we'll probably answer it and we'll do another live on just diet chart and food chart for babies soon, month-wise and, phase-wise, infants and toddlers. I think we should do it in a very spaced manner because there's just so much of information to tell. We can't just fit it into an
Absolutely.
hour. So
Yes.
anyway, thank you so much all of you all for joining
Thank
us
you
and
so
thank you
much.
Priyamada for joining me today on the live. And
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
we'll
And
keep
I
coming
think there
back
has
with more
been
live
a
sessions.
collaboration.
Yeah. Okay
Thank
then.
you. Have a
So
good
I'm just
day
gonna
and
end the
great day.
live.
Yeah.
You too. Bye bye.